Welcome, Mr. Lee, to the very, very first edition of the Winter 2022 Founders Talk. Obviously, I'm Kyle Steele. You know me. We got a long history. Today is Ben Hoyer, who is also with Rally. We're looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have with you. But let me just tell you first a little bit about Rally. Rally is a social enterprise accelerator. One of the things that we're trying to accomplish is to help individuals like on this call who are at the very early stages of building their ventures, make them sustainable, but then also create positive and measurable social change. And so the way that we do this is by surrounding them with programming, which is what the fellows are going through. But the other thing that's really interesting is that we want to be a hub for social entrepreneurs around the world where they come to get the knowledge and resources they need to move their ventures to the next level. And so part of that is to showcase the individuals in this community who can help them along that journey. And that's why we chose you. You're one of those people who accomplished some things. And so we're showcasing you to the world, Mr. Lee. So I hope you're okay with that. You okay with that?
Fine time to ask, Carl.
All right. Well, listen, Lee, this is going to be easy. This chat is going to be easy for you. There's no right or wrong answers, but how we love to open these chats up is a question that you probably have never gotten, and you may have not thought about this in a very long time. But one of the things we want to understand is who is baby Mr. Lee, right? So I want you to think back on the environment, the people, the things that are around baby Mr. Lee that shaped you into the individual and businessman that you are today. If you can just pull out tell us what that environment is and how it contributed to who you are today, that would be perfect.
Yeah, interesting, Carl. I'm calling you Carl, Kyle.
Yeah, that's all right. You call me worse.
Yeah. That goes back, obviously, 71 years ago in what we call West Columbia, South Carolina. A young Black man, a young Black boy growing up in the South. And that's 1951. So I went through all the stuff that Black folks went through in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on, okay? I really didn't associate with white folks until I got in college. My neighborhood, we did everything in our neighborhood. So, we didn't have to go out to the neighborhood. I'm sorry, we did go out to the neighborhood when we went downtown. My mother would take it downtown sometime on Saturday to Sears Roebuck. Y'all probably don't know about Sears Roebuck, but it's Sears now, to shop. And that was our exposure. My first inkling that I wanted to get into business or do something like that was at 7 years old. And my mother's neighbor verified that one time when I was around a group of people, and all of them just obviously said, no, you weren't. And she verified it. But I saw this magazine with this guy, and at the time he was dressed like Superfly, and on this real nice car with all these girls around, and nice girls. And I said, I'm going to be rich and a bachelor. So I didn't make the bachelor thing very long. I've been married 40, going on 45 years. So I didn't do the bachelor thing, but yeah, my still goal is to be rich. So we're still trying to achieve that goal. We haven't done bad, but that was my drive. To be honest with you, that was my drive. My role model was in my neighborhood. My role model was the funeral director, and because he had every day he had on a suit and a tie and a white shirt, and he drove a Cadillac. So he was probably the richest guy in the neighborhood, and at least all of us thought so. And so that was my role model, because remember, I wanted to be rich and a bachelor. So he was rich, and so he wasn't a bachelor, but he was rich, and he was my role model. Fast forward, my father was in the military. He was in Germany, Vietnam, wherever. When he came back, we were in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He got transferred to Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fort Bragg. I'm sorry, I was born in South Carolina. We got transferred to North Carolina. And again, in a predominantly Black neighborhood. My school was, I went to segregated school all the way through the 12th grade. And then I went to North Carolina State, which was my first integrated school. Excuse me. There was a total different environment for us. But my counselor, and I didn't decide that, my counselor decided that I needed to go to North Carolina State. And I was pretty good at math. And so she decided that when you do the SAT, you put 3 schools. I put North Carolina, A&T, Howard University, and I left out, I didn't want to go to any other schools. So she said, you need to go to North Carolina State. And I said, yes, ma'am. Back those days, we did, yes, ma'am. When we talked to elderly people, adults, or what have you, we, right. Yes, ma'am, yes, sir, what have you. So I ended up, Howard University had a lot of riots going on. My mother said, you aren't going to Howard, because our next door neighbor, her best friend's son, got kicked out of Howard for rioting. He was doing civil rights protests and what have you. North Carolina A&T lost all my information, my application, everything. So I got accepted in North Carolina State. So I showed up at North Carolina State, predominantly white school, 13,500 students, 100 Black students, including the part-time students. So I showed up there. My mother put me out with my big trunk of clothes and everything and said, you're in the Lord's hand, and she drove off. So, and I thought being in the Lord's hand mean I can party.
Mr. Lee, I wanna, it feels like, because you started off the story talking about how there are the realities of the environment that you grew up in. There was segregation, there were things obviously happening that were pivotal during the time in terms of race relationships, and then transitioning to a school that was predominantly white. And the question was around originally, like, well, how did that shape you into the individual and the businessman you are today? And so if you can help us, it feels like that was a significant thing, and it's shaped the way that you either approach business or are personally. Can you just unpack how growing up in the time you grew up, being introduced into not having any contact with folks who didn't look like you until college, can you kind of unpack how that shaped you into the human you are today and the businessman you are today?
We had very good teachers, and the adults forced us to do everything with focus on excellence. If you showed any potential in my high school, for example, they would not allow you to mess up. One example is I had enrolled in sharp class because all my friends were in sharp class. I was in sharp class the first day. They called me to the office. Again, that was time when your name was on the speaker and they called you to the office. You shuddered. You really got nervous. So they called me to the office, and I walked in the office, and the secretary in the office, I didn't even see the principal or anybody. She said, "You supposed to be in chemistry class." And I said, "No, I signed for sharp." She said, "No, you go to chemistry class." So they would not allow you, and I had all kinds of teachers all the way through, allow you to basically throw away your opportunities. But that shaped me in that everything that you did, you had to do your very best, and you had to strive for excellence. Okay, I had a Black high school of 150 students in 1969. 2 of them got full rides to Yale. 3 of them got full rides to Yale. 2 of them took it. That was the first year that Yale accepted females. and two of those three were females that got full rides to Yale. So 2 went to Yale, 2 went to Duke, 4 of us went to North Carolina State. So our counselors really guided and directed that, and they kind of mold us into what to expect and what you had to do. Number 2, all the way from, I can remember, education, education, education. My grandma used to say, get education because that's the only thing they can't take away from you. And it was always a them against us. So you get education and no one can take that away from you. And so education was very important. And you put those together, every education and doing your best, your very best, that's kind of what molded me.
Yeah, and that's what obviously you ended up, the thing you're doing now is excellent. I mean, I've always known you to be at the height. Matter of fact, I was in Detroit having a conversation with someone who was a restaurateur and they knew you. I was like, wait, like, they know who Mr. Lee is, and they had a lot of reverence and respect for you as a man in the franchise industry. I want to pivot really quick. I want to talk about the work. Well, you no longer do it. You handed over. It was very much so your mission to hand over your work and retire and to live in your big penthouse in the sky. So what you have achieved and the business is in good hands. But can you tell us about the business that you handed over that you're probably still chairman of, but can you tell us a little bit about what that is so folks can know?
We're in the restaurant business, basically quick serve fast foods. Currently, we have, and I have to write these down, but we have about 17 restaurants, 3 in development now. So I have to put it at about 20 restaurants in 4 states and 6 cities. That's our restaurant side. We also do we're in partners with Levy at the Amway Arena for basketball venues and what have you. And we're also in airports. We're in 2 airports, Orlando Airport and Charlotte Airport. So that's kind of the size of our business, but it's basically the fast food, quick serve business.
Gotcha. How did you get into that kind of work, Mr. Lee?
The grace of God.
Unpack that for us a little bit.
2 things happened. I was in the printing business. I was in corporate America for about 12 years. Got laid off. Always wanted to do business, and my wife, excuse me, me and my wife were on the same lines there that we would open our business. And she got transferred to Orlando. And so I followed my wife to Orlando. We opened a print shop, and that failed in 5 years. And I tell it, excuse me, I tell everyone that's how I got my Harvard MBA. It could have been cheaper to go to Harvard than to open that business. But that was my lessons in business, that failure. But I got an opportunity to be a minority partner on a bid at the Orlando Arena. And that opportunity came through in 1993, and we've been there ever since.
Can you said it was a Harvard, the business that failed prior to that, the print business it would have been cheaper to go to Harvard, but you got your MBA there. Like, what was some of although the business failed, go ahead.
No, what I'm saying is, I didn't get my MBA at Harvard. No, I got my MBA by
in the business
and failing, right?
Yes,
and failing, but it would have been much cheaper to go to Harvard. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Yeah. So what lessons did you take out of that failure? I mean, like what, as you think back on it, why did the business fail? What things that you did personally that contributed to the failure, and what did you learn out of that?
The business failed because I didn't understand how to run a small business. I come from a corporate environment, worked for large companies, and whenever I needed a report, I asked for it and it was there. So when you're in your small business, you end up having to do everything yourself, especially initially because you can't afford to help. So I did know my numbers, because, you know, I didn't have an accountant at the time. I tried to do all that in QuickBooks myself. And so I never was up to date on my numbers. Everything was back. I didn't understand that you need somebody to sell and you need somebody to produce. When you're by yourself, you go sell, then you got to come inside and produce. Well, the problem with that is while you're producing, no one's selling. So when you finish producing, you don't have anything. So now you got to go and sell again. Okay, that destroys your cash flow. All that stuff I didn't really understand. Cash flow, selling, continuous selling, bringing business in. And in small business, it's not profitability. Cash flow is the lifeblood of small businesses. Most small businesses go out of business, not because of a lack of business, but the lack of the cash flow to maintain their operation.
Mm.
And you say, what was my fault? The whole thing was my fault. You know, my wife was working. That was the deal. My wife was working and I was running the business and all this stuff I didn't know. And the big thing, I did not seek help. I did not have an advisory group and all that stuff. I did not seek help until it was too late. My biggest problem was I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't even know some things to ask the questions about.
Yeah. So these are some relevant points here. Not understanding your numbers, right? Not having help, and the help manifested in several ways. One, not having people around you to advise you, to help you to come to your decisions. And then also just in the operation of the business in terms of just selling and producing, right? Like having someone along with you. Were you, so is that right? Does that sound about right?
No,
okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. And then were you a single operator?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So it was just you in the business by yourself.
It was me in the business by myself. I ended up hiring some people. It was a franchise.
Okay.
So I hired some people, but you know, they would stay and go. Turnover was high. So it was really me operating the business.
Oh, that's really interesting. That messaging is really relevant to a couple of people on this call. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm sure they're taking notes on that. Ben, you got any before I move?
Well, I was just thinking about, again, Arthur, Mr. Lee, we haven't met before, but it's good to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. And I was just thinking about the guy with the car and the Superfly and the nice ladies and the goal to be rich and a bachelor. And like, I just am trying to imagine I have a 7-year-old at home and that becoming the goal. Can you talk a little bit, and you've achieved some of that, right? The 45-year marriage notwithstanding, but can you talk some about how that North Star or that goal, did it evolve over the years? Like as you went into that franchise with the printing business and closed it, as you went into that partnership at Amway Center, was it still how did the goal evolve for you? Or was it always this idea of success that you were shooting for? Did you hit that? When did you know you hit that, or did it move for you? Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what's been your motivation over the years?
Excuse me, the goal continued to move. I mean, that was just, can I say, a bright light at 7 to go off. I mean, I didn't even probably know the word goal at the time, but you start actually setting actual goals as we got into business. Well, let me back up. The first goal was to get into my own business because I went to college, everything, got me a 9-to-5 job. I was in sales for Kodak and all that, and wearing a coat and tie and thought I was looking good, and I had achieved a level of success. Now, the problem about setting goals is that my first goal was too low. My first goal was in corporate America was to be in management. Well, I didn't set my goals high enough, or I didn't set a second goal. So when I got into management, I went through a state of depression for probably a couple months because at that point, I had achieved my goal. I didn't have any place to go. And I didn't realize what was putting me in this depression until I realized that I had to set another goal. And when I set my other goal, it was to actually get into business. Okay. And so now the job is just a job. My goal, what I'm really doing in the job, and when I'm not in the job, and even when I'm in the job, I'm thinking about what kind of business I can start and how to get into business, how to raise money and what have you. And then I realized from that you have to keep setting your goals. Okay. When we initially got into business, it wasn't to get into business to turn it over to my kids. It was to get into business to grow it big enough that we can sell it and have retirement money. Okay. In 1998, I went to a presentation, and it was similar to what someone said earlier about the amount of wealth. They were saying that, most of the wealth is taken up by families, by other people, what have you, but most of the wealth in the world is taken up. So there's only a small percentage of wealth that hasn't been spoken for that you can really tap into and for your kids. And that's when it dawned on me that if I didn't do anything to set up a foundation for my kids, that they were going to be starting all over when they graduate from college and what have you. Okay. So then what the goal was to build a company that was big enough that we could turn over my kids, that a kid would have a platform to take it to a much higher level. And that started in 1998. So really, when that started, everything changed. Everything changed. I got into at the time, I was a partner at the arena, and that was about it. I got into one restaurant in Jacksonville, Florida, and I was happy. It was going to make enough money for me and my wife to retire. But when I decided that this was going to be a legacy, something we're going to turn over to our kids, that's when we started growing. We started buying other restaurants, building other restaurants, what have you. That's when we started growing. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I really like that, because like when the types of entrepreneurs that we work with, early stage social entrepreneurs, have had usually some moments like what you're saying, where there's a measure of accomplishment, but then there's like a level of dissatisfaction, and getting clarity on that next level goal is what's usually driving them. And I love how you can stagnate, but you are sounds like to me, very goal motivated. And I think that one of the things we spend time with entrepreneurs trying to do is get them to get clear about what their goal is, what's really driving them, how explicit can you be about your goal, because the clearer you are about that, the better it pulls you through the difficulties of success, or the challenges to achieve success. Do you feel like getting that clear goal about passing the company on to your children, are there moments where that really drove your decision making? You said it pushed you to grow. Was that explicit? Like, oh, it's not enough now to be a partner in the Amway. If I'm going to pass on a company to the kids, I've got to acquire some companies. Or did it really drive you in that way?
Well, yes, because just being a partner in Amway, and it was a contract, so every so many years it had to be renewed, was not going to guarantee me a platform for my kids, because who knows, the next time the bid came up, we could have lost the bid and I wouldn't have had anything. So we had to get something that was more within our control, more permanent, and that we can grow. The other thing I would tell you in setting goals is don't set goals too low. Kyle can tell you, we used to have a mentoring program early on, and I would always say, think big. Okay, my first problem when I hit the wall the first time is because I wasn't thinking big enough. And so that's why I kept hitting walls, because I would set a goal, I would hit it, and now I got to set another goal, because my ultimate goal, I didn't think big enough that I can keep my goal, can keep moving as I progress. All right. So I would say, everyone, dream big. There's nothing wrong with dreaming big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense because you said like you one of the things in your childhood that set in you is about being excellent, right? And so it's not a matter of if you hit the goal, it's when you hit the goal.
Right.
And so for you, it was a matter of can I lay the next track in advance so that as I hit this goal, I got the next one to move towards, because you're going to be excellent, right? And so that's what that was helpful to you. Now, in the first year of the business, kind of like when you got the contract, kind of like walk us through. I guess I was thinking like the first year, but at least the first 2 or 3 years. Walk us through, like, what did that period look like for you? Like, but more specifically, like, what were some of the challenges that you ran up against that were inhibiting you from hitting your goal? And then how did you meet those challenges, or how did you approach those challenges that were inhibiting you from hitting your goal?
Well, the first year in the actual business, we started the business in 1985, and that was a computer software company. And most of you on this call don't remember that there used to be computer stores on every corner. And at the computer stores, everybody thought that what's going to end up next door to computer stores were software stores. Okay, because software came in boxes and all, and you had to put disk in and all. Most of you guys don't understand what I'm talking about, but that's how it was at the time.
But this is before, Mr. Lee, this is before you opened up the printing business. You had a software company?
This is before the printing business. That's where we started off at. Okay. And then we were going to get a software franchise. Fortunately, just the day before I signed a lease, the franchisor called me and told me they were going bankrupt. So we were able to cancel that, and that was the first venture for Lee Wesley. All right. Fortunately, I had not left my job then. So 2 years later, my wife got transferred to Orlando, and we decided that instead of me getting another job, we would start a business, and that was a printing business called Alpha Graphics Print Shops of the Future. Okay, so we started that business, and while in that business, half of the franchisees got together and filed a class action suit against the franchisor. Okay, and so of course all of us got kicked out, and we continued the printing business under a different name. And while I was in the printing business, because I was a registered minority business, one of Host Marriott, who was the prime, asked me to be a partner with them on the arena. That's how we got into the arena business. Now, the unique thing about that is that, and again, I'm always thinking about how I can break out of this stuff, right? The thing, we negotiated a contract with Host where it was a 3-year, the overall contract was a 3-year contract with a 2-year option. We negotiated a contract with Host that they would mentor us and teach us the operation. And in the 2 years of the option, we would get the option, and then Lee Wesley would actually be the operating partner for the arena. And that happened in 1995, that Lee Wesley took over the operating partnership and we got the option from the city, and Lee Wesley took over the operating partnership from 1995 till 2010. Lee Wesley actually ran the arena, and all the employees of that partnership was employees of Lee Wesley, and we were actually the operating partner of the arena. Okay, so that was the business part. Now, we were lucky when we took it over. There were Marriott was already running the operation, so we kind of took over a ready-made administrative staff and a ready-made business, and then just went from there.
Gotcha. So the Amway stuff was that the food related?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And so then you ran. Okay, so you took over the operations there, but then the goal at some point became, how do I create a platform that my family that I can grow and my family can grow a bigger business on? So what were in doing that, like, how did you look at the business and say, like, how do I turn it into a platform? And then what were some of the challenges that you encountered as you started to execute that strategy of creating this platform?
So it's very easy from there, because remember, I was in the printing business.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing, when I got on the Amway contract, to be honest with you, I didn't even know that they sold food at the arena. I'd never been to an arena. Okay, so my whole thing, remember the first 3 years they were supposed to be mentoring. I'm in the printing business. I know that's not going anywhere. So when I got in this thing, my whole mindset is to learn the business, learn the food business. Host Marriott at the time was the largest airport vendor in the world. And I figured that if I learned the food business, I could partner with them on other opportunities that require minority participation. And so I was actually learning the business. I actually sold beer. I actually mopped beer off the floor. I actually sold hot dogs. I was actually in the business, running the business at the same time trying to run my print business. So you said the platform, the whole platform is that I'm in this contract, but this contract may not last forever. I know I got to do something later. And so if I learn the food business, now I understand the food business, I can expand from there. And that's how I expanded. My first food opportunity was to get out of the contract business, was a Burger King in Jacksonville. And that came about because I was a partner, ended up being a partner in Jacksonville Airport with Host. And they had an opportunity when they ran the Super Bowl to bring in a Burger King, and they had connections with Burger King. So that opportunity was to hook me up with Burger King for me to turn a Miami Subs, which is what I was operating and own at that time in the airport, into a Burger King. And that's what we did. And then Burger King offered me some opportunities on the street.
I love that you are running a printing business and you have a contract at the Amway Center. And in order to figure it out, you're serving beers and mopping up beer off the floor. And then with an eye for what opportunities come next. Like, I mean, if that doesn't tell us that no matter what business you're in, if you want to hit your goals, like, don't be afraid to get into every level of it. Like, it tells me two things: that get into every level of it, but also like that networking ability, that ability to see the opportunities and be in the right place at the right time. How much of that do you feel like that skill of the networking, being in the right place at the right time, seeing the opportunity, knowing which one to take advantage of, your success do you attribute to that skill of networking, seeing the opportunity, taking it when it's there? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, that's probably my most important skill set, is the networking, and Kyle can tell you this: the networking, the seeing opportunities and hopefully taking advantage of some of them. But the networking is extremely important. If you remember, I said when I started my printing business, the reason it went under because I didn't know what I didn't know. Okay. Networking allowed me to meet people who had much more experience than I did. And I would ask one basic question every time I had a conversation is, what didn't I ask that I should know? Okay. Because again, I didn't know some questions to ask. So I would ask people, what didn't I ask that I should know? And you'll be amazed what some people would tell you. Okay. When I first got into franchise business, I found that franchisees weren't open with their numbers. So what we did is we put together our own performer, which frankly, I didn't know how to put together a performer then. So we put together a whole performer, and then I'll take it to a franchisee and say, can you look at this and tell me what I'm missing? Are my numbers correct? And they would end up correcting my numbers. Oh no, you have to do this, you have to do that. So I ended up getting information about how to run the business by putting together what I thought it would be to run the business and asking people to correct it for me. And so that's how I learned about business. The thing I would tell everybody is perseverance. If you really want, I really wanted to be in business. I mean, I really want to be in business. Don't ask me why. I guess that goes back to the Superfly guy.
Yeah. Mr. Lee, okay, so I'm hearing it's some things that I can connect directly to some statements you previously made. You talked about growing up in the community and having understanding the dynamics around the community and feeling like you were already at a disadvantage, and so you had to work harder in order to take advantage of opportunities. So now you become a someone who is an executor, right? Like you kind of rev up into an achiever mode, right? And then the other thing is there's this notion of education, right? Like getting the education because they can't take that away from you. And then you talk about the setting goals stuff. And so when I listen to you talk about go through this experience, underline when you said, hey, I learned about the business, that is getting what you're doing is you're trying to get the education, because you know that once you get it, right? Like once you get it, then you can take it and move it out and apply it yourself. And now you're more in control of your situation, right? And so it's really interesting and cool to hear you talk about, to see how getting the information, the education is pivotal to your success, and how staying in that mode of constantly getting information, surrounding yourself by people who will give you the information, trying to understand what gaps in information you have, has driven you, has allowed you to achieve the level of success that you've come to today. Does that sound pretty accurate to you?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So before we open up the Q&A, because we have about 15 minutes left, it would be nice. I mean, you've given some golden nuggets to on this during this discussion to our entrepreneurs and other people who will listen to this. But are there any other lessons or encouragements that you would specifically give to someone in the early stages of their business on this call? Like, is there any other nuggets you can think of or encouragements?
Believe in yourself. There's going to be people that's going to, naysayers and all, that's going to tell you that you're crazy, that you don't know what you're doing. And probably at the time when they tell you, you probably don't know what you're doing. And that will lead you to start doubting yourself and what have you. Believe in yourself, because if you don't know it today, you can learn it. Perseverance, hang in there. Whatever goes up comes down. And that's true in business. You're going to have some successes, you're going to have failures. Learn from your failures, celebrate your successes, and share with others. You know, one of the things I do, and as Kyle and I made, is I work with some of the young Black professionals just to share with others. Always try to bring someone along with you. Okay, because unfortunately, the only thing guaranteed to us is that we won't be here forever. And hopefully, when my day comes, there'll be someone back there that can just take up the baton and keep running the race. But that can't happen if you aren't sharing your journey as you go along. So those are things, you know, the magical things about the business, the technical stuff. Everyone is expertise, so they'll learn that'll come. The most important things is the confidence in yourself and your determination in yourself, because you're the driving force behind the success of your business.
Mr. Lee, I appreciate you. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, when you mentioned people will tell you that you don't know what you're doing, and when they tell you that, you probably don't. But that's okay. If you don't know it today, you can learn it. That kind of confidence, I feel like, is so important for people who are going to be entrepreneurs. And it's a hard thing to learn. It's encouraging to hear someone like you at the stage you are in your life, having owned that attitude, coming from the place that you have come from. And it gives me hope that I can be that kind of person. But I think entrepreneurs, I would just want to double tap on that. that is the attitude that you hear consistently in successful entrepreneurs. You could tell me I don't know it, and you're probably right, but that's okay because I'm going to go figure it out. And that attitude that I don't have to know everything, but I can figure out anything is like really powerful. Thanks for sharing that with us today, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, and I want to add on to it that when I think about your pathway towards success, and the fact that these opportunities came up, and it's interesting that you were able to take advantage of those opportunities because you had acquired the information and the understanding that when Burger King came to you and said, "Hey, I have this opportunity," it's because they came to you because they saw you execute well, right? They said, and they saw that you understood the business, right? Because you had spent time, like, executing well was important to you, learning was important to you. You networked, right? And you can network and with people and be alongside the right people, but if they don't understand whether you can achieve something and you understand it, you will not be able to get access to the opportunity. And you were able to pull all that together, right? So that when those opportunities came, people said, okay, Mr. Lee, he achieves things, he understands the business. So me giving this opportunity to him versus someone else makes sense because I know him and he understands the stuff and I see him execute well. And so that's really was cool to hear you say that. In the last few minutes, let's open it up to some fellows to see if you have any questions. This is your time now to ask Mr. Lee the questions that you would love to hear or get answers to, I should say.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi. Okay. Hi, Mr. Lee. So my question is regarding franchising as a business model and a growth strategy. And I know that you said early on in your career, your first business was a franchise business. So my question is, why did you choose franchising? And what are your thoughts on franchising as a business strategy and growth model?
We chose franchising because basically it was an easy entree into business. It was a business that had been proven. The model had been proven, so we can get into that and then grow. We didn't have to start from, because I had started some businesses early on from just ideas, and they were flopped very quickly. So this was something that an idea has already been proven, and I wasn't wealthy, so I couldn't keep doing that. So it was ideas already proven that I can get into. Franchise models are funny. Franchising is a inherent conflict of interest. What do I mean by that? The franchisor gets his money up front. You get your money at the bottom. Well, the franchisor gonna get his money whether you make a profit or not. So they're pushing for you to sell. You're pushing to sell profitable things, which aren't necessarily the same thing. So it's an inherent conflict of interest. And unfortunately, by contract, you have to basically go the direction they say grow. So one way of combating that is to get involved with your franchise. All of them have some kind of relationship with their franchisees, some type of organization. Get involved with the organization. I was on the co-op board for 10 years. That's in Burger King. The co-op buys all the food for all of the restaurants in North America. Okay, so I was on that board. I was on the minority franchise association board. I was on the regional association board. I got involved that I can getting involved allow me to meet the executives of the franchise in informal situations, so that I can express my opinion and also understand some of the things they were doing. Okay, but especially today, franchisors are looking for multi-unit operators. They're only looking for the big. It's hard to get in and buy one store. They're looking for the big guy. Okay, that's going to start off with 5 stores or go to 5 stores and then go to mega stores. And that's what they're doing today. And frankly, that model is the only model that can survive today because of the cost, the pressure of the cost and everything. You have to be a larger franchise or franchisee in order to survive. The 1 or 2 stores owners aren't going to survive very long just because of other pressures. But it's a great growth model. The risk is minimized from just a regular startup because there is a proven model that you can research. And the key for people looking into franchisee is talk to as many franchisees, current franchisees with your brand as possible. Okay, talk to them and get to know them, and if you can, see if one of them will allow you to work in their operation for a period of time, so you can really understand the brand that you're looking at. That answer your question?
That's great. Yes, thank you.
Anybody
This is
else?
Carolyn. Yeah,
ahead.
this is Carolyn, and I think so often knowing that right next step, whether it's to come up with a succession plan to turn this over to your children, or you mentioned that some businesses failed. Like, what, Mr. Lee, how did you ever figure out, like, now is the time, I'm at this crossroad and now I need to, feel like starting the business is a huge leap of faith, but so is exiting it in one way, shape, or form. So I'd be curious just to hear what that was like for you.
I never figured it out. To be honest with you, I always started too late and I exit too late. The same way in the stock market. That's why I don't play stocks. All right. I always buy high and sell low. So I didn't. Basically, we've closed businesses and it was all financial. As I said, know your numbers. Know your numbers. We had a concept called, what was the name of it? Corner Bakery. Okay. And we got into it. We did 2 stores. We were going to do 5 stores. The 2 stores weren't making it. We analyzed why the 2 stores weren't making it. And the business model was broken. Okay. We analyzed ourselves. We analyzed the whole thing. And the business model was broken. And we decided to exit the brand. And the brand, that was 5 years ago, and the brand still was having problems. The business model had broken. And so we knew we had to get out of that business model. It cost us an awful lot of money. Believe me, it cost us an awful lot. But if we would have stayed in, it would have cost us more. So, but the strength there for us is that we had grown to a size big enough that we can absorb the loss. Most businesses, small businesses, they couldn't absorb that loss. They would have had to file bankruptcy, or they'd have been totally out of business. We just had to close down a concept. Again, that goes back to, you have to get some size. If you go in the franchise business, you want to grow. You have to get size in order to survive in today's environment. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Although I think you may have been a little more self-deprecating than necessary. You've done okay in spite of your buy high, sell low strategy.
Yeah, I think I love that. And I appreciate the know your numbers. And like, I'm always amazed at how clear successful business leaders are on the right metrics to look at. And the discipline to understand which numbers do I need, and then getting those numbers kind of religiously to make decisions. One of our rally makers, Rob Panapinto, does a workshop on making sure you build a financial dashboard that even in your early stage, sometimes in early stage, we figure if I've got cash in the bank, I'm fine, as long as I can keep cash in the bank. But he encourages us to build a dashboard so that we can predict where we're going and make sure that that's not an illusion, the cash in the bank, that we're going in the right direction. So that's a cool, it's funny that you say you were always too late, but it seems to have worked out all right for you, Mr. Lee.
Let's see here. Any other questions? We have time for one more. Comments? Questions, comments?
I have one question about the networking thing that you had mentioned that you felt like was maybe one of your major traits. I think that's a hard thing to do authentically and well. If you were going to give people like one or two pieces of advice around how do you, what's helped you as you've approached networking with intent or purpose, are there any things that you could pass on, or here's a trick in conversation, or here's how I know where to go, or here's the things I'm looking for when I'm talking to someone?
Every concept, every venture you're going to take, there's an industry for it. Every industry has associations. They have other people in it. They have associations. They have help groups, what have you. Now you guys have LinkedIn. We didn't have LinkedIn. You have all this stuff online that if you are focusing on an industry, reach out to anybody in that industry. You'd be surprised how many people will open up to you if you reach out to them. People like to talk about themselves. Okay. One thing I learned in networking, and frankly, I don't like networking. I really, now that I'm at a point that I don't have to get out there and knock on doors and what have you, Kyle, I can tell you, you don't see me out there. That wasn't one of my favorite things to do, to go into a strange room and walk around and get to know everybody. I made myself do it in a number of cases, but that's not something I like doing. So, but you'll be amazed in any environment, you can find someone that you can connect to, okay? That you guys agree. There's other people there that don't like networking either. But just get there, introduce yourself, start talking about your industry, get them talking about themselves and what they've done. Because everybody likes to talk about themselves, okay? Just remember, 50% of what they tell you is a lie. The other 50%, they exaggerated, but that's all right.
I love it. Everybody likes to talk about themselves and 50% of it's a lie. That's perfect.
Oh, that's great. Well, Mr. Lee, I really appreciate your time today. This is a very good call. I knew that I could rely on you to make it fun and interesting and also insightful. So I appreciate you. You represented Orlando well as we move this out into the LinkedIns and all the stuff that we have today. It's been a fun journey. You and I have a long history. And matter of fact, one of the most pivotal lessons I got about marriage and how I should look at that came from you. It opened up. It was a light bulb. And I will say, if I didn't learn anything from you, that was a very important lesson that's helped me be successful today. So I appreciate you for giving me that wisdom from a personal standpoint.
Well, good. I'm glad to see something stuck.
Yeah, all of us, right? Like everybody all of a sudden got married and had kids because of wisdom
that's
from you.
right, you did, didn't you?
Yeah, the whole group. It's like we waited until we were 40 to do it. Because we wanted to be bachelors. I think that's what it was. We wanted to be successful in bachelors. So we wanted to do opposite. Although none of us were rich, we didn't get rich or started getting money until after we got married. So maybe there's something to that. Okay, Mr. Lee, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Okay.